Welcome to Songs from the Source. We are your host band, Seven Seas of the Heart, and we are in our home sweet home, hunkering down happy place, the Boathouse Jazz Cafe. And as we like to do here at our Songs from the Source sessions, we are going to share with you another original song. But before we do that, as we also like to do, we are going to introduce the band Seven Seas of the Heart. We have love, joy, laughter, beauty, ease, play, freedom, and dogs. And I am the mustachioed embodiment of Seven Seas of the Heart band, Mickey, the badass poet, Mahan. This evening's Song from the Source is a true story based on a real historical figure whose name was Lawrence Merrick. Lawrence Merrick was from Germany. He immigrated to the United States in the early 20th century and bounced around for a few years and ended up in a mental institution and spent the last 50 years of his life in Willard Psychiatric Hospital, which was in Old New York and Seneca Lake, on the east side of Seneca Lake. It's no longer in existence, but Lawrence lived there for 50 years, and he held the position for most of those 50 years as the asylum's gravedigger. He lived in a little shack in the cemetery and dug all the graves when necessary and played his harmonica and lived a rather peaceful, uneventful life from what we could gather from the little bit that we have read about Mr. Merrick. So we call our song Lawrence Merrick, Gravedigger Extraordinaire. In 1900, a thrown stone struck his head. He drank and he drank until his nose turned red. Admitted to an asylum in Germany for singing, whistling, and just being noisy. Released, he enlisted in the Kaiser's army, looking for a new life at the age of 23. 1907, he sailed the Kaiser Augusta Victoria, bound for the United States of America. For 50-odd years, he dug his 6-foot-deep holes, the deceased asylum patient's final home. With just a shovel in weather foul and fair, Lawrence Merrick was a gravedigger extraordinaire. In the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with some scrap and a big spool of wire. Let's start that verse again. In the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with some scrap and a big spool of wire, as an itinerant tinker he made his way, fixing this and that for minimal pay. When he passed through Ellis Island at the age of 29, he took whatever work he could find. A porter at the New York Tribune on Park Row. At Bellevue Hospital, he washed the windows. For 50-odd years, he dug 6-foot-deep holes, the deceased asylum patient's final home. With just a shovel in weather foul and fair, Lawrence Merrick was a gravedigger extraordinaire. bald little chap with a flat mustache in a Charlie Chaplin film. He could have been cast as an industrious proletarian type, far removed from the rant, the cant, and the hype. In a worker's dorm, amidst all the chatter, singing, shouting, whistling in a boisterous manner, Lawrence landed in the Bellevue Psych Ward, 1917, the year of the Great War. For 50-odd years he dug 6-foot-deep holes, the deceased asylum patient's final home. With just a shovel and weather foul and fair, Lawrence Merrick was a gravedigger extraordinaire. Next stop, Central Islip State Hospital, where Lawrence told the doctors he heard angels. Was there a message the angels were bringing? No, said Lawrence, I just heard them singing. Willard State Hospital, his last destination, to see the world again, a lost expectation. 50 years he roamed the institution's grounds, playing by the rules, not making a sound. For 50-odd years he dug 6-foot-deep holes, the deceased asylum patient's final home. With just a shovel in weather foul and fair, Lawrence Merrick was a gravedigger extraordinaire. He stayed in a small shack in the cemetery, among all the bodies that he had buried, keeping to himself, playing his harmonica among the native ghosts of the Senecas. His graves, they say, were perfectly rectangular. In hip boots he stood, and he dug in the water until the age of 90 in 1968. Lawrence died in his sleep. Who will dig his grave? For 50-odd years he dug 6-foot-deep holes, the deceased asylum patient's final home. With just a shovel and weather, foul and fair, Lawrence Merrick was a gravedigger extraordinaire. Lawrence Merrick, Gravedigger Extraordinaire. We're running out of time. Enjoy.